Welcome back to Crawlspace and Missing. I am Tim here today with Lance. Lance, how are you today?
I'm doing fantastic today. You know, when you say welcome back to both shows, Missing and Crawlspace, that only means that we have updates or we have an episode that deserves to be on both of these channels, both of these feeds, because we want all of the listeners to hear what is going on, especially in the world of your mood. Tim, let's just cut to the chase here. How are you, sir?
Doing all right today. Definitely pleased to be back here with this special report, sort of giving another update. This is now the third episode that we've done on this story of a potential serial killer in New England, a new and unknown serial killer in New England. Of course, there's been several bodies found in the New England region in the past couple of months. That number is a little bit debated. It ranges anywhere from like 6 to 12. But we've gone over these bodies that have been located, these human remains, in two previous episodes. And we've got some updates here today. So we're going to go over all this here today, Lance.
You really hit on an interesting point there about the discrepancy in how many bodies have been found. We'll get into that. It's going to be an interesting conversation that we're going to have today.
And so we mentioned this is the third episode in this special report that we're doing, Lance. We're going to have more because we know there's news that is still going to break, but we also want to speak with experts in this field. And we're going to read some quotes and play some clips from experts in a little bit, but this expert, Michael Arnfield, is one of the founders of the Murder Accountability Project. And you can find some information on what he does and what the Murder Accountability Project is at murderdata.org. And Michael Arnfield's been on our shows several times now, and he is great. And this Murder Accountability Project kind of looks at murders as a whole and tries to figure out if a cluster in a certain region is related. So essentially exactly what we're talking about here in these episodes.
Exactly. I can't wait to have the listeners experience his expertise in this because, like you said, this is just tailor-made for what he's been studying. A cluster of bodies, lots of questions on why we're so interested in this, and lots of questions from people who aren't from the New England area. And you hear New England and you think one thing, but it could be a completely different type of perception that you have. And Michael's going to come on and clarify however many questions he can possibly clarify and provide his expertise. So super excited about that. And one quick piece of housekeeping here. We have an announcement. We're finally doing a live show, a virtual live show again. We used to do these a lot. We used to do them for fun, and we used to do them as a fundraiser for our nonprofit, Private Investigations for the Missing. This one is a fundraiser for Private Investigations for the Missing. Tim, when's the date? When are we doing this? Finally, we're back.
It is Wednesday, June 11th at 8 p.m. Eastern, and we've got some special guests lined up, and we'll announce those as we get a little bit closer, but just want to put that date out there to you. Mark it on your calendar. It is Wednesday evening, June 11th. We're going to be raising money for the nonprofit Private Investigations for the Missing. Make sure to find out more information about that nonprofit at investigationsforthemissing.org. Make sure to follow us on social media at Crawlspace Podcast or Crawlspace Pod, or if you're listening on Missing CSM out there on social media. We're going to take a quick break and be right back to discuss. All right, Lance, so we're back here speaking about the potential serial killer in New England, and one sort of, I don't know what you'd call this, like a cultural oddity, maybe, but we have mentioned these Facebook groups that have come out of nowhere, essentially, because of this story, and we were looking at one group called New England SK. The follower count there, or the member count, I should say, is up over 30,000. And there's also another group that's almost at 70,000, and they were created by the same person named Jennifer Mitchell here on Facebook. The one with 70,000 now says group title pending, so that is now the name of the group. And it's a little confusing because there's even a third group. And I do just want to read the about on these two groups that were started by Jennifer Mitchell. She says, we have no affiliation to the group New England Serial Killer, hashtag NESK, a Facebook group that was created by Philip B. on April 24th, 2025. And she goes on and mentions that the creator of that group was arrested in Brockton, Massachusetts for impersonating a police officer. We couldn't find anything on that as far as it happening recently, so I'm not sure when that happened, or we couldn't actually confirm that did happen.
I just want to chime in real quick with that. It was more than a Google search on this person's name. We did a background check on the person, and we did a background check on the person, his real name. So the name that you see on Facebook is not his real name. It's a version of his name, but he's got another name that he's gone by. We did background checks on both of them, and unless any charges haven't been filed or have gone through or something, the background check that we did said that there were no police records. So I don't know where this impersonating a police officer and attempting to pull people over in a purchased state trooper auctioned vehicle, I don't know where that information is.
Yeah, I don't know either. I'm not sure if it's in this group. There's a lot of posts in this group. I haven't seen anything on it. But Jennifer goes on here to mention that New England Serial Killer, the Facebook group, was created in 2022 as an open discussion group based on the theory of a serial killer targeting college-aged men in the Massachusetts and New Hampshire area, which we actually have spoken about years ago on the Crawlspace podcast. And she says recently Facebook has altered the name of the group to Group Title Pending without giving an explanation. And she says this group was not created to convince people that there is a serial killer in Connecticut or Rhode Island. We use this group as a platform to bring awareness to many local missing persons cases with the help of their families. We bring hope to the families of missing persons, murder victims whose cases have not been solved. Any and all theories are allowed to be discussed. Okay, so that is two of the groups, and there is a third one that is called New England Serial Killer, hashtag NESK. And so that is the one started by this Philip B. guy. That one only has 4.8 thousand. So just wanted to mention that sort of as a cultural oddity about this story. Just make sure you're in the group that you want to be in, I guess. And also, speaking about Facebook, we did notice that there was some information on Brittany T that was posted in these Facebook groups. Actually, all three of them had a bit about her. And we covered Brittany T's case on Missing back in January, I believe. There's an interview with Brittany's mom and sister that you may want to listen to. It's very interesting. Brittany has been missing from Brookfield, Massachusetts since January 10th, 2023. And so that is why her story gets posted in these groups because she's still missing. No one knows what happened to her. But the news about her is that our nonprofit, Private Investigations for the Missing, Lance, is doing a walk-in tip campaign or a call-in tip campaign, and that's Saturday, May 17th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. That's at White's Landing at 7 Fiskdale Road in Brookfield, Massachusetts. And Private Investigations for the Missing has a new private investigator on the case. His name is Dennis Driscoll. He has over 20 years of experience with Boston Police Department. So he's working on the case. So any tip that you leave may get to him. There is a tip line. If you want to email a tip, it is PIFTM tips, TIPS @gmail.com. And there's also a phone number, 1-866-331-6660. And this information will be in the show notes.
Great. Always good to release some news about Private Investigations for the Missing. And this is just such a great resource for people if they have any information, right? It's all anonymous if you want it to be anonymous. So this helps the family. It helps the investigation. It helps everybody. So hopefully we get a good turnout. We get some good information that comes of it. But here's my segue to good information. You were just bringing up all of the Facebook groups, and it's a cultural oddity. This Philip B., and we're not saying his last name because we looked into him, We don't know what his angle is. Go to these groups, check out the name. I mean, the name's out there. You can research this individual. Good information comes from good people. Bad information comes from people who want to be disruptors for whatever reason. We see it with the Turtle Boy situation with Karen Reed. I'm not going to go down a Karen Reed road in this conversation, but feels like we have a similar person who's trying to do something that's attention grabbing, that isn't really considering the ramifications of what they're saying and posting online. Does this person want there to be a serial killer? Or does this person what's the end game, right? Does this person want to help, or does this person want to create chaos?
I don't know. Maybe just make a name for themselves in this field, especially if this group was created so recently. And it's really a lot of missing flyers and videos and things like that on the story. So yeah, I don't know what the angle is on that one.
All right. Well, I think your disclaimer when you were talking about the Facebook groups is pretty good. Just make sure you know what group you're getting into, and make sure that the information that you're consuming has some sort of source or some sort of backup. You and I talked before we recorded this whether or not we should mention the previous names of the people who have been found across New England, and I'm still on the fence, and I'm leaning more towards no, because we've been hearing, especially from one of the families of one of these individuals, they're so adamant to say, please stop saying this about my family member. Stop. It's not connected. This is not connected to a serial killer. And I feel like that should be applied to the other ones too. It's not like we're trying to diminish their existence in the first place. We know them. It's just, how many times can you put these names into this conversation about a serial killer when there's no connection? There's not even a gender connection anymore, male or female. There's not even that anymore.
Yeah, let's just go over this timeline, and then we're going to get into a couple of updates, and we'll get into more of what you were just speaking about. So on March 6th, 2025, there was the remains of a woman found near Norwalk, Connecticut by the Norwalk Police Scuba and Fire Rescue teams. And they had discovered this woman's clothes on the bank of the Norwalk River before discovering her body. So she is really one of the first people that is spoken about in this story. Also on March 6th, same day, unidentified remains were located by a hunter in a wooded area in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And there's no information about gender, age, or cause of death in that case.
Right. So 2 bodies right now, not even foul play associated with either one of them.
Correct. And then March 19th, 2025, unidentified remains of a 40 to 60-year-old female were located inside of a suitcase near a cemetery in Groton, Connecticut.
Now, this one obviously has some sort of malice involved. Someone's in a suitcase. Somebody put somebody in a suitcase after probably murdering them. But, Tim, there's an update on this, which makes it unrelated to any serial killing thread, right?
That is correct. So Suzanne Wormser, she was 58 years old. She is the woman who was inside the suitcase. And Donald Coffel, 68, of Groton, has been charged with her murder. And he admitted that he hit Wormser in the head with a baseball bat, kept her dead body in their apartment for a week and a half, then dismembered her and put body parts into 2 garbage bags, which he disposed in of 2 large trash bins. So, yeah.
And I was even going down the path of maybe this person regretted murdering this individual, and the act of putting the remains near a burial ground was sort of respectful in some way, paying respect to the person that he might have accidentally, or regretfully killed. But it doesn't sound like that at all. It sounds like this person had significant issues, and the act of dismembering a body and disposing of it in various locations through various vessels is not compassionate or regretful. It's just somebody who is trying to get away with murder.
Right. And it also says he put her torso in a suitcase and wheeled it over to the entrance of the Colonel Ledyard Cemetery. Now, I did read somewhere that Donald Coffel was in a hospital, apparently because he's got cancer. So he wasn't sent to prison or jail right away. He was I guess, cuffed in a hospital. So I don't know what would go through a 68-year-old man who has cancer's head to make him murder his roommate. But, here we are.
So at this stage, not connected to the other bodies.
Correct. Yeah. No reason to believe they are, I think. Seems like an isolated incident. And then the very next day, on March 20th, 2025, the remains of missing New Haven mom Denise Leary were found in a wooded area near home, and Denise had been missing since September of 2024. Now, we've talked about her case a little bit in the previous couple of episodes, saying that her disappearance seemed a bit suspicious, but certainly unclear whether or not she was a victim of homicide, and I don't think there's been any update in that case since she had been found. But the family is a bit confused, and in fact, they said baffled. That was the word they used to Dateline. So baffled by her disappearance and death. So that one's still got some mystery in it. I do believe that Denise Leary was suffering from schizophrenia. So that could have something to do with her disappearance, or it may not. We're not sure. Okay, and then on March 26, 2025, there was the remains of another missing woman from Rhode Island. She had been located, and this is the case that the family is very adamant she is not a victim of a serial killer. They believe they know who committed that murder. April 9, 2025, unidentified human remains were located in Killingly, Connecticut. There's no information on gender or age or cause of death.
Right. So after the last, 2 or 3 that we've just talked about, since the one who was found in the suitcase and whose death has been claimed by an individual, what do we have for connections here that we can put together?
Nothing whatsoever. Yeah.
Nothing whatsoever.
Yeah.
In the case of Denise Leary, this might be attributed to an individual who picked her up before she went missing. She didn't want to be located. She had said, turn the location off on my phone, and she left on, I don't know if it was a date or not, but somebody had picked her up, and her family didn't have a chance to get a good look at the person, but she came back and she was fine. She wasn't injured from what we've read. So that is not something that you can connect to a serial killing. The one that you just mentioned about the woman whose family, they're sure, do not do this. Do not say she's connected. Who knows how that's going to impact any investigation that's currently happening in regards to her death. And now we have another one that's just unidentified and no information on gender or age or cause of death. So nothing's connecting here. Just bodies.
Right. I wanted to mention there's a quote here from retired chief of detectives at the Hartford Police Department. His name is Brian Foley, and he spoke with NBC Connecticut recently, and they asked him that question. And he said geography is really the only commonality you start looking at. Age, sex, race, MO of how the person died. They'll start looking at the person's patterns, locations they were in for any sort of tie-in. That's basically how each one is approached. That's what he said. And he also goes on to say, when a body is found, it's compared against that to see if it's a missing person that we know is missing. And it says that there are currently 30 reported missing persons cases in Connecticut dating back to 1952. So probably a little less than I would have guessed, actually.
Yeah, actually. And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. There was another body that was found on April 22nd, 2025, and it was of 45-year-old Megan Meredith. And she was found near a bike path in Springfield, Massachusetts, and it's kind of overlooking the Connecticut River, which, of course, has a sort of dark history in New England. If we're talking about serial killers and that river, there's a serial killer known as the Connecticut River Valley Killer, who dumped bodies in the valley. This was mostly in the 70s and 80s. But it was a little bit further north than Springfield, Massachusetts. It was mostly in New Hampshire and Vermont.
Right, given the name because the Connecticut River divided the border of New Hampshire and Vermont, so it's about halfway up each of the states there. Springfield is quite a distance away. It is central Massachusetts, and we were also looking into potential suspects when you Google Connecticut River Valley killer when we were producing the show Dark Valley, and there's a certain name that comes up every single time, and there's a person connected to that person who was in Springfield at the time. What I'm saying is, like, you can try to make like connections any way you can, and it's just the unfortunate fact that this person was located within sight of the Connecticut River, but it was in Springfield. Is that connected to these string of killings? I mean, we don't know how this person died, right? Megan Meredith?
No, there's no update. It is her death is being investigated by the homicide unit, but we don't know yet if her death was a homicide. And that fellow Brian Foley actually did say that investigators treat bodies that are found as a homicide until determined otherwise. So very decent chance Megan Meredith's death was not a homicide. We just don't know yet. Okay, and then on April 25th, 2 men's bodies were found in Salem, Massachusetts. This one was kind of recent, and I do believe that they arrested someone in these murders. So this one is also not connected, we believe.
And this is a situation where the murders have been connected to a man who is an unhoused individual in Salem, Massachusetts. He's been arrested for the murders, and that is, as far as we know, where it stands today. So he hasn't been connected to any of these other deaths.
Right. And then there's a couple of new updates here. There was an arrest made in connection to the homicide of a woman named Nyasha Mendez, who is 35 years old, and she was found dead at the Evergreen Cemetery in New Haven, Connecticut. And New Haven comes up a couple of times already in this story. And they arrested Edwin Arroyo Roman, 55 years old, of New Haven, and he was charged with murder and tampering of evidence. And his arrest warrant states that Mendez was found naked with her neck slashed and had multiple lacerations around her chest, waistline, and jawline. And her underwear was around her ankles. Sorry for the disturbing details there, but this case sounds much more like that of a serial killer case than probably any of the other ones because of how she was found with her neck slashed and, other disturbing details.
Yeah.
But no definitive connection between this Arroyo Roman and any of the other deaths. But he did mention that he had killed 3 people in Puerto Rico. That is something that he apparently confessed to after admitting he killed Mendez. So I'm not sure if that's true. We don't know anything about those people that he may or may not have killed. It's interesting in that this actually could be a serial killer here.
Yeah, I'm curious to find out how the others in Puerto Rico were found. Were they found in a similar fashion? Were their throats slashed? Did they have their underwear around their ankles? Because this is not only a potential serial killer, this is a potential serial rapist as well. Because I don't see any other reason for the underwear to be around someone's ankles other than he was going to perform a rape on this individual. This is the only person who has been found who has had any significant tangible MO attached to it.
Right.
There had been no other indication that any of the other bodies found were victims of this type of attack.
Yeah.
So in case I'm not being clear, I'm leaning heavy on stop the New England serial killer narrative.
Right. Yeah. I mean, again, there's nothing to say that there is or isn't a serial killer in New England right now. But this Arroyo Roman seems like he could be an actual serial killer, but very unlikely that he's connected to these other bodies that we've spoken about.
Right.
And I wonder if the investigators that he confessed about these killings in Puerto Rico to, if they are digging into that now and trying to find out if there is any legitimacy to those confessions. I mean, you're right with the MO. If there was unsolved murders with similar MOs found in Puerto Rico when he was confirmed to have been there, could be some news in this story soon about an international serial killer and rapist.
Right. So we also have these other individuals, the males, the men who have been found, and both of them have been found in Taunton, Massachusetts, which is about 2 hours, a little over 2 hours away from New Haven, Connecticut. And the first one that we heard of was Stephen Myers, and he was found behind the Bristol Plymouth High School in Taunton. And that was on April 30th. The article that I'm referencing right now also mentions another male whose body was found in Taunton on March 25th. And this was Samuel Stovall, 51, but authorities have said his death hasn't been deemed suspicious.
Okay.
So now we're all over the place. Now we have, two men, two middle-age-ish men. One was shot once and died, and the other one has no suspicious causes attached to the death yet.
And so this Stefan Myers, this 39-year-old man found behind Bristol Plymouth Regional Technical High School, found in a construction area with one gunshot wound, a single gunshot wound. So that sounds more like a hit or something like that, with the construction area being part of that as well, just one gunshot wound. They do say that foul play is suspected in that case, so we will keep an eye on that one as well. But you're right, that's obviously a much different MO. That's a man. He was shot. That's not at all like the last body that we spoke about, where the woman was raped and murdered near the cemetery. So yeah, that one seems almost more like a organized crime hit than anything.
Yeah, or a grudge or something more personal. And I think organized crime is a little bit more personal as well, because if you're in that position where organized crime is going to contract a hit on you, you've done something to anger the organized crime people. So it's not random is what I'm saying. This is a specific hit. I'm not saying it is. I'm saying if it's organized crime, then that would be a specific hit. And I also want to be clear, when we say one gunshot wound, and my brain went to this when we first read it, this is not a single gunshot wound to the head.
That we know of.
Exactly. That we know of. Nothing has said single gunshot wound to the head. But when you first read it or you hear it, that's where your mind goes. That's where my mind went, was like, I expect to hear those words at the end of that sentence. But we didn't read that anywhere. So I just want to be clear. No one has said that here, that it's a gunshot wound to the head.
Right. I think that is probably likely, though, that it was, just because there was only one gunshot and you have a dead body. But yes, no confirmation on that. And there was an article that was released from themirror.com just recently, and they had some quotes from some serial killer experts, Dr. Ann Burgess and Dr. Catherine Ramsland, both very credible investigators.
Definitely credible. Catherine Ramsland, she's written a bunch of books. She's a professor of forensic psychology. She writes in forensic science, crime. Has dabbled a little bit in the supernatural, and she's just a powerhouse. She's a powerhouse, as everyone knows, and everyone knows that Ann Burgess is also a powerhouse, being one of the founders of the behavioral science unit at the FBI.
Right.
I mean, we're two podcasters. That's someone who helped organize a division in the FBI that's legendary.
Hey, we watched Mindhunter, Lance.
I enjoyed Mindhunter. I enjoyed Silence of the Lambs, often quoted.
Yeah, Ann Burgess is supposed to be one of those characters in Mindhunter.
Right.
Yeah. So a couple of quotes here. Catherine Ramsland said, I think people are highly influenced by the Long Island serial killer situation, where remains were found all over the place, and now they're beginning to be connected to one individual. She goes on, because of the way that investigation was poorly handled, because there were cover-ups and the FBI was shoved out, I think people are very suspicious of police handling these investigations.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that that is one of the reasons she is leaning on, not super heavy, but that's one of the reasons she's giving as to why this is so fascinating with people and why people have grabbed it to create a narrative that they want it to be. And it's this distrust of law enforcement, that they hear these other stories, especially with the Long Island serial killer, that law enforcement did a certain thing that was not indicative of what you expect law enforcement to do in a situation like that, in an investigation like that. So when this starts happening here, where does your head go? Your head doesn't go to, oh, remember all of those murders that law enforcement successfully executed justice? Like, your brain doesn't go there. It goes to, remember the ones that got botched? Remember the ones that you were like, how did they not see that? So that's where people go to. That's how they gravitate, and that's what she's saying here. And I think it's excellent that someone is saying that, someone of her stature.
Yeah, she goes on and says, I don't blame people, because I think that case was so egregious and embarrassing for that area that I can understand people saying, well, why should we wait on police? And obviously, we've spoken about Lance on the previous couple of iterations of this this special report, that police aren't going to rush to judgment, obviously, and they may not say that they think there's a serial killer, even if they did think there was a serial killer. But again, there's really no reason for them to think that there is at this point.
Right, and I'm sure they've had conversations behind closed doors. I would hope that they've had conversations behind closed doors saying, do you think that any of these bodies are connected? Let's try to figure this out. I hope so. But they're not going to come out and tell the public, like, yeah, we got a whole task force on this.
No, it's quite the opposite. Yeah. They say that there's no evidence. I've got to believe that the DA of these areas are pretty sick of answering these questions at this point.
And we'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
Thanks to our sponsors, and now we're back to the program. So Dr. Ann Burgess goes on here in this article from the Mirror. She says, right now there isn't enough information to say yay or nay. And she says, you almost have to go case by case, then take a look at it all. We need to keep watching. We need to see if any more bodies shows up. So, okay, so that is what we're doing. So we're taking her advice there. And we are going case by case and sort of ruling out certain cases. So I feel like we're handling this this interesting moment pretty responsibly.
Yeah, and I like to think that we're not taking her advice. I think she probably heard our coverage, and without saying so, she's really referencing what we're doing.
I'm sure it happened that way. Okay, and there was an interview from the weekend from Fox News, not my favorite place to get news, but this segment with Paul Morrow, who is a former NYPD inspector, was pretty interesting because he was commenting directly on this situation. So we're going to play a clip from Paul Morrow here.
We have to go with the police professionals at this point. The state cops up there, I've worked with those organizations. They know what they're doing. There's a lot of institutional knowledge. Massachusetts State Police been around forever. They know what they're doing. And at this point, these agencies are saying no comment. And remember, serial killers have a type, right? That's the commonality. You're going to have something that's in common. Right now you have, it looks like 8 women, but there's some reporting that one of the remains goes to a male. The ages are really disparate. And I'm tracking to the Rex Searman case, again, just the accused on Long Island. We have a very steady bracket there of victims. And I'm just not seeing that here. It's very spread out. Until we get more indicia of a commonality and there's some organization to all of this, I'm cutting the way the police are and saying there's nothing here.
And here's another clip from Paul Morrow.
One of the limiting principles people don't realize on police work, especially detective work, is how many cases you catch. You can only pursue so many cases. And so, people get their car stolen and say, well, the cops did nothing. It's because the cops are chasing 16 murders and 5 rapes. So it's a limiting principle. And when you have the police chasing other things that are not really there, and the example is the Narragansett Police Department. The Narragansett police went out with the canine unit and spent a couple of days looking on the beach, because in this Facebook group, one of the people that's a participant alleged there were bodies on that beach. And so as a result, a bunch of cops, a bunch of detectives, a bunch of dogs wasted resources looking for something that wasn't there.
But what you didn't hear in those clips we didn't play was the very beginning of this broadcast, where the news anchor starts by saying that a series of murders and uses terminology like killing. This is insane to me that a news anchor, a journalist, can lead with that and not say bodies, not say deceased, because some of these people might not have been murdered. There might be suicide. There might be an accidental death. There's a number of other things that this person could have said. Killing, murder, like serial killer. This is just like the media machine that is just fueling this. They're just stoking this fire the best they can. Is there nobody in like the broadcast area, like the writers or somebody who's like writing copy on this, looking at this and saying, I don't know if we should actually say murders here. Like they're not actually all murders. I know this is the age we live in, and then the TikTok videos. I mean, you showed me that one that I still just look at to laugh at, where the woman's just in the woods, like looking around as if she's being stalked.
Yeah,
I hope she wasn't being stalked, but I mean, just to lead with that is so gross to me.
Again, it is Fox News, so they are kind of a little extra when it comes to being like that, and you know, it's hard to even say they're being factually inaccurate, because we know there's at least 1 or 2 murders confirmed.
Yeah.
So if they say murders, they can just, you know, say, well, we didn't mean all of them. You know, so I mean, again, kind of back to what makes Fox News not a great, credible news outlet.
Right. But the point of playing those clips was for the investigator who is actually giving some good information there. But good Lord, just like, be mindful. If you're looking into this, be mindful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Good advice out there. Okay, everyone. Thanks a lot for listening to this part 3 of this special report. We will be back soon. We are going to speak with Michael Arntfield of the Murder Accountability Project. Check out what he's got going at murderdata.org, and check out Private Investigations for the Missing at investigationsforthemissing.org. We got a fundraiser coming up, and the Brittany T. Tip campaign is on May 17th. Thanks a lot for listening, everybody. We will be back soon.